So, Gentleman Jack is HBO's newest costume drama, but it's so much more than that. It's this really fascinating story of Anne Lister, this real life woman in the 19th century, but she's so contemporary. And she's brought to life by Sally Wainwright, who created the show, and the star of it is Suranne Jones. So, Sally, I want to ask you first. I read that this was a 20-year journey for you. How did she come onto your radar? And just talk about the whole sort of process of bringing her to the screen.
Well, I grew up in Halifax, which is where Shibden Hall is. And I used to visit there a lot as a kid. I was taken there, just because it's a museum and it's a place of interest in the 1970s. And there was no kind of mention of Anne Lister at that time. And it was only sort of during the 1990s that I became aware that an unusual woman had owned Shibden, that she was quite transgressive, that she'd written a huge diary, that she was gay. And then I read a book in 1998, Jill Liddington's Female Fortune, where I suddenly got this huge, massive hit of just who she was. And I was just blown away that I'd known Shibden Hall for so long and always loved Shibden Hall. And I'd no idea that this extraordinary woman had owned it. So I read Jill's book and I instantly wanted to do more with it. I instantly wanted to dramatise this extraordinary woman who'd done so many unusual things and had such an extraordinary outlook on life. And who had written this extraordinary document, this massive, massive journal, a sixth of which is in the secret code, where she talks about her intimate relationships with other women.
So we know you, Sally, from really, I know you've just done something on the Bronte sisters, but mostly very contemporary drama. And I think that's what's so compelling about this is that I said costume drama, but it's not. I mean, it feels like such a contemporary story in the way it's told. And I think the way it's acted, Suranne. And did you feel that she was a contemporary woman? Did you identify with her?
Sorry,
to Suranne, yeah.
I think as soon as I read, so I've known Sally for about 10 years and we've worked on 3 other projects together, The Life of Crimes of Julie Bottomley, Unforgiven and Scott and Bailey. But I've never worked with Sally as a director as well as a writer and creator. And when I heard that she'd written these scripts, as soon as I read them, even from the page, they felt very fresh, a new take on a period piece, unique. And then when you think about it, they had to feel modern and unique because Anne Lister was modern and unique herself. And I think only Sally Wainwright could have written this in the way that it's been written. And we've both talked about how we're glad that she had 20 years. She's been trying to get this away for 20 years. So, but how we're glad that she had 20 years to get to know her before she was able to paint the picture, the portrait of the woman that she is now, because it might not have been as detailed and complex if it had gone earlier, or certainly, as you say, it would have
been quite niche. I think if I'd got it away 20 years ago, I don't think it would have been on a primetime channel.
Right, because it's HBO here, it's BBC One in England, and I'm curious, Sally, with the writing. Most of I think what you've done lately has been for non-commercial television. Is there a difference in the structure when you're writing, when you've got to build in commercial breaks versus when you've got that full hour and not having to worry about that?
I think when you're writing for commercial TV, it's actually a really good discipline that you have to find those hooks at the end of each part. I like writing for the BBC because you do get a full hour. You get 59 minutes, nearly a full hour. And screen time is precious, so the more you can get, the happier I am. But I think I still have a consciousness of trying to build in hooks within that hour, even though there are no breaks or there's no specific requirement to do so.
And then for Suranne, we're talking about the contemporariness of the character, but also I think of the filmmaking. And Sally, you are directing some of these episodes. How difficult is it as an actor to break the fourth wall on film?
I was nervous about that when I read. I thought it was an exciting thing to do when I read it from the scripts, but it wasn't until I sat down and spoke to Sally and she explained to me that it was actually a diary entry. So there's only so much kind of filming you can do of me writing the diary or the voiceovers, which are also diary entries. But Sally wanted it to be a way of me engaging with the audience, so that when we actually read Anne Lister's diaries ourselves and been in the presence of Anne Lister's diaries, the real ones, the emotion that you get from reading those words where her hands have touched the page, and the closeness and the intimacy that you get, Sally wanted to use the fourth wall to do that to the audience. And, you know, Anne Lister speaks about her diary being a comfort, being a friend, where she can throw things off her mind and let them go, and speak the truth. And I think that once Sally had explained that, it became easier. I mean, the first time I did it was horrendous, because as a lot of the stuff with this character, I was trying to be big and brave and bold without kind of going so far that you know, I made her a joke. She had to be steeped in reality, that she was an oddity, her words. She was an eccentric, but we did a lot of work on steeping that in reality. But I remember the first one was, you said, just look at the camera and wink on the first day.
Oh yeah, that was
and it got a huge laugh. But then I thought, oh, I've done something really good. And they came out and you went, yeah, but not like that. So I was like, oh, okay. I got a laugh for the wrong reason.
And that wasn't actually in the script, was it, that one?
No, it wasn't.
There were a couple of times on the set where we improvised and just go, oh, let's have a go at doing it here and see if it works. And some we used and some we didn't.
Yeah.
We only used it if we felt it really, really landed and had an impact and a point.
And I'm curious, Sally, about now the writing, creating, and now stepping in as a director, and how at ease are you with that? Were you just sort of, after seeing other people direct your work, that you wanted to be much more involved right the way through the process?
She's the best director I've ever had, by the way, before you answer that. I told you that before.
Oh, isn't that nice?
You should remember that.
Oh.
Anyway, now you can answer that.
I've always wanted to direct. I started writing. I started writing when I was about 12, but the first proper thing I wrote was when I was at university. A proper play that had a beginning, a middle, and an end. And I directed it, and we took it to the Edinburgh Festival. And for me, directing was always as important as writing. But then, when my writing took off professionally, some reason thought directors were people who'd been trained to do that, and I hadn't, so I couldn't do it. And then I had children, so I didn't want to be away from home. And then I slowly realised that my passion to direct had never gone away. And I always hated handing scripts over to other people. I used to get really bad-tempered. Suranne will verify this. We used to have a lot of arguments. I really hated having to hand over to other people. It really got me down. And finally, I asked if I could direct Unforgiven, in fact, and they wouldn't let me, which was a drama that I wrote and Suranne played the lead in. Yeah, I got upset about that. So finally, when I wrote Happy Valley, I said I wasn't going to write it if I couldn't direct it. Oh. So I got to direct one episode and showed that I actually knew what I was doing. And then it kind of took off from there. But I love it. For me, directing is an extension of writing. I know some writers just love to write the script and hand it over and, you know, pass it on to another imagination. You know, two imaginations are better than one. But for me, it's a natural extension of writing. And I now write only because I know I'm going to go on to direct it. And that for me is, I love both disciplines, and they are very different disciplines. But for me, the icing on the cake is the direction.
And then what about editing, like the editing process?
Oh yeah, that's well, I love all that. It's all part and parcel of direction. Is the post-production process. And you know, there's so much creativity in post, and I love all that. I love every aspect of it.
So how long did Suranne, were you shooting Gentleman Jack, and then for Sally, just how long after it was shot did it take to bring us these 8 hours?
We shot for 7 months. And then we ended in Copenhagen just for a week, and then we did. I was brought on to do a lot of ADR because there's with period stuff, there's a lot of modern noises that you have to redo. So it felt like a long process, but we also started more than 6 months before we. Yeah. We
had quite a long rehearsal process, which we don't normally get in telly, but we asked for an unusually long rehearsal period, just so we could construct this character, this very unusual woman.
So about a year for me and longer for Sal.
And I know it's just 2 years of this woman's fascinating life, and I know that there's I want more. I mean, as you said, I got to see 5 of the 8, but boy, I want more than just the 8. Sally, you mentioned Happy Valley, and that's sort of, I think, on this side of the Atlantic, how sort of people really got to know you. And then also with that double whammy of Last Tango and Halifax, both of which won the BAFTA for Best Drama Series. And that's sort of an extraordinary achievement to win once, but to win twice.
One Best Writer as well.
I was gonna get to that. I didn't want to take that away from you.
Right.
But
Oh no,
sorry. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm just showing off.
No, it's as you should, because on this side we talk about the Emmys, and there's so many categories at the Emmys, but down at the BAFTAs there's so few, and it frustrates people like me that love to see people be rewarded. But with the experience of winning for each of those, what was it like for Happy Valley versus Last Tango to win Best Drama Series?
I think winning for Last Tango was the first time I'd won a BAFTA, so that was quite a big moment. But I won Best Writer the week before, because the Craft Awards are the week before the big awards, and nobody ever notices what's happened at the Craft Awards, so nobody never ever talks about winning. We do at Gold Derby. So the first award I won was at the Craft Awards for Best Writer for Last Tango, and I was quite drunk, and I said to my husband, I've got my BAFTA, and it's like, I said, you can put this in my coffin when I've died, and he was like, no, get lost. That's like, that's not happening. But it was a big moment. It was a really big moment. When you get your first BAFTA, it's pretty special. Well, then, and for Suranne with Dr. Foster, which exploded. I mean, it was sort of so compelling. And again, with the BAFTAs, to win Best Actress, it's a very small category. It's very expansive. So it's people in regular series and films and limited series. Can you talk about, did it feel like validation? Because I know both you and Sally started, on a continuing drama, Coronation Street. So sort of 20 years on, did it feel like the industry had really given you a stamp of approval?
I guess, I mean, yes, in a way. To get a BAFTA was, again, it made me feel like I'd worked hard and been seen, and I was choosing the right projects and I was working with some extraordinarily talented people. Mike Bartlett, I got to spend a lot of time with, and I did the same with Sally. I afforded myself the luxury of a rehearsal time with him, and so it felt like I was in a place where I was kind of putting in what I was getting out. So if you can work hard and give yourself the luxury of delving into the text and finding out the intention of the writer, then perhaps it just felt like that was the way I should work. And the BAFTA, getting the BAFTA just made me feel like I was on the right track, and that is how I will continue to work in the future. It is to not overlook anything and continually just delve into the piece with real passion at all times. And also I've got the luxury of working with some really, really, really talented people and some gifted writers. But I remember I just had my son. He was 8 weeks old, and I was actually nearly falling asleep at the BAFTA just before my category came. And I was thinking, oh God, I need to stay awake. And then when they shouted my name, I was like, oh God, okay. I've got to. And then we left shortly after because we were so tired. And I've got a picture of my son in the morning with my husband's bow tie on, and we put the BAFTA in front of this tiny little person who was 8 weeks old. So that memory of that time for me is 2 wonderful things that I'd created in one little picture. But it's special.
Well, one thing, and again with those limited categories, I was so frustrated as a Scott and Bailey fan to not see it be recognized, because I think what you've done with Suranne and with, I think, Sally Lindsay, and created these really compelling, strong women. It's a police drama, but it's so much more than that. And I was so pleased that it eventually that the stories did get resolved, that you guys came back to it. What's that like to sort of work on something like Scott and Bailey, which kind of comes and goes over the course of many years?
I mean, I absolutely love those characters. And we were just saying that at the time of, when Scott and Bailey first started, people would say, wow, this is about two women and they're detectives and they work together. And we were like, you would never say that about two men. Wow, this is about two men detectives. I think it was ahead of its time. I think Julie Bottomley, The Life of Crimes of Julie Bottomley, which was our first collaboration, was ahead of its time. It was a brilliant, dark comedy. And I think that, again, Gentleman Jack has that same contemporary feel to it that's just so modern and full of life and full of energy. And I think maybe Scott and Bailey, people still say to me how much they love Scott and Bailey and how much they love the scripts and the humour, which Sally is really good at.
Yeah.
She mixes the dark with humour, and that's why I say no one could have written Gentleman Jack in the way that Sally could have written it.
But it's interesting, Scott and Bailey, one of the things I remember when people wrote about it, and it was very well received, but there were a couple of articles criticising the fact that I'd written weak men in it. And I don't think the men in it were weak. I think they were all perfectly interesting, rounded characters. It's just that they weren't the focus. But people interpreted that as me writing weak men because it was on the women rather than the men.
Yeah,
I couldn't help but think about, Sally, about being ahead of your time when I think of, I just saw something about a new show that's coming with Emma Thompson playing a female prime minister, and I think of Amazing Mrs. Pritchard. And just that just wonderful show with Jane Horrocks as the prime minister. And at the time, did you when you wrote that political drama, so much of it seems to have sort of come true.
Yeah. No, it was. I'm sad to say that I think Mrs. Pritchard wasn't appreciated for what it was. It was one of those shows, you're right, now and again, that was criticised for what it wasn't. People would say things like, "Oh well, this isn't the thick of it," and it's like, "Duh, yeah, it isn't." Why would I want to write that? It already exists. I was trying to do something different, and people didn't. It didn't. I think it actually did better in America than it did in England. I think people appreciated it more in America. I was invited over by the Department of State to give a speech at a luncheon.
Were you?
Yeah, that was embarrassing.
Oh, you did? You came and did it?
Yeah.
Brilliant.
My New Year's resolution that year was to say yes to everything, and that was the first thing I got was this invitation to speak in Washington. So I couldn't.
And what was this speech about?
Women in politics, the geopolitical landscape.
Well, Carrie Mulligan says it's the thing that she's done of which her mother is the most proud.
Really?
So, yeah.
Oh, wow.
There you go. Well, listen, I think that the thing you should be most proud of is sticking with Gentleman Jack for 20 years to bring it to the screen. And Suranne, the timing is also, you're her age right now, I think. Yeah. And I love that. And it was meant to be that they had to wait for you.
And being a 40-year-old, thank you, and I'm so thrilled it wasn't done before, obviously. But I think being a 40-year-old actress looking for roles that are full-rounded and three-dimensional, and I'm able to, having a small child, it has to be something important to leave him, and just something that I can use my 40 years of experience on is a real gift, and those parts aren't around as much as I'd like them to be.
Well, luckily, places like HBO and BBC are doing it. So listen, thank you very much. Everyone watching, please go to goldderby.com and make your predictions for all kinds of awards, and hit the subscribe button so you can see interviews with fascinating people like these two. Thank you again.
Thank you so much.
A lot of fun.